everyone presented here. We start our program. Economics is everywhere, and understanding the economics can help you to make a better decision and lead a happier life. It's my pleasure to invite our Dean SPGS, Dr. N. Sengal, PhD, TNAU Coimbatore, to deliver a welcome address and opening remark through video conference. Welcome, sir.
Good evening to all. I'm really happy to be the part of the today's endowment lecture. Really, the Agriculture College Research Institute Madurai, especially the Department of Agricultural Economics, come forward to organize this endowment lecture. So, Dr. Magendran, Dean Agriculture Madurai, and the head of the department, Dr. Anjigam, and also today's guest speaker, the most important person today's evening lecture, Dr. Anil Kuruvilla, is a wonderful personality from Kerala Agriculture University. And also today is the topic also more relevant to today's economical situation, because the implication of trade liberalization on Indian agriculture is the biggest area which everybody may have interested, not only the economists, but also the people working on social science and also scientists, how the trade liberalization will actually changes the entire scenario of Indian economy, not only the agriculture and also its influence very many fields. So really, I really thank Dr. Guruvilla for come over here, accept our invitations, and come over from Kerala Agriculture University, Trichur, to join us for today's lecture. And for the information of the speaker, sir, we are organizing regularly the endowment lectures and inviting the speakers from various walks of life, starting from science to social science and economics. And many of the leading economists delivered the lecture in this endowment lecture. One such our previous Vice Chancellor, Dr. Ramasamy, and also many economists who they delivered the lecture in this endowment lecture series. In this, really, we are fortunate that to have Anil Kuruvilla here to deliver the endowment lecture. And also the endowment lecture not only being viewed by the students of Agriculture College Madurai, but also the students across all the constituent colleges, and also it been recorded in the Microsoft team, and it will be archived for the future viewing also. So in this, I am really happy to invite him on behalf of our Vice Chancellor and Tamil Nadu Agriculture University for this wonderful evening endowment lecture. And also I thank Anjigam for arranging this lecture, whole economics department in Madurai. And also I thank Magendran, Dean Madurai, for hosting the lecture. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm really happy to hear your lecture, sir.
Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure to invite our professor and head, Dr. M. Anjugam, PhD, Department of Agricultural Economics, to deliver a brief introduction about our chief guest. Welcome, ma'am.
So very good afternoon and good evening to one and all present over here. And first of all, I thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor for giving us the opportunity to jointly organize this endowment lecture today. And I thank our Dean SPGS for giving us the opportunity and also sponsoring this endowment lecture series for our department. And I am very much privileged to invite our the guest speaker of this today's endowment lecture series, that is Dr. Anil Kuruvilla. He is a professor of agriculture economics working currently at Thrissur campus, Kerala Agriculture University, and he is having 22 years of rich experience in teaching, research and extension activities. Actually, I am happy to tell to this unit is that he is our own alumni, and he is an ICR JRF holder for the year 1996 to 98 batch, and he did his MSc program or master's program at ACNRI Madurai campus. So I am very much glad to invite him because he is our own alumni, and his specialization is on trade and development, and this is a very important concept. though we are very much developed in marketing sector, so we have to go a longer way in case of trade and development. So, and also after completing his PG program at SNRI Madurai campus, he did his PhD in TNAU main campus Coimbatore, and he did his research on freer agricultural trade in India, implications on agriculture growth, poverty and prices. And all over his 22 years of his experience, his major work is on, or expertise is on trade and marketing as well as economic development. And he is a recipient of best oral presentation award for his paper, that is Rice Economy of Kerala, present status and future directions. And he is handling two research project as PI, and he got his research program from a very renowned, very renowned funding organization. One is called as SANI, from which he got one project, and is also conducted research which is received from WTO cell from Kerala state. And he has so far guided 5 PhD students as well as 12 master students. And he has published around 41 research publications, and he has made a very long travel across India as well as some foreign countries, and he has delivered lectures, that is 28 presentations in the foreign as well as national seminars. And he has attended 24 training programs both on international trade and agricultural commodities, and he has been certified as a UNCTAD. This is, you might be knowing this UNCTAD. This is the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, and that UNCTAD certified non-tariff measures data collector in recognition of his a course which he has completed on non-tariff measures and data collection. I think this is one of the greatest contribution by Dr. Anil Kuruvilla. And he is the coordinator of project coordination group for agriculture economics, agriculture statistics, and agri-business management at Kerala Agriculture University. So with this brief note, I welcome once again on behalf of our Department of Agriculture Economics, ACNRI Madurai, as well as on behalf of Dean SBGS and Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, I am privileged to welcome Dr. Kuruvilla, Anil Kuruvilla, for as a guest speaker for this endowment lecture today. So I welcome you on behalf of all.
Thank you, ma'am. It's my honor to invite our special chief guest, Dr. Anil Kuruvilla, PhD, Professor of Kerala Agricultural University, Thrissur, to present an endowment lecture on implication of trade liberalization on Indian agriculture.
I wish to thank the Honorable Vice Chancellor, the Dean PGs, the Dean of College of Agriculture College and Research Institute, and Professor and Head, and all the staff members of this department for inviting me for this lecture. TNAU has always been innovative and a pioneer in conducting various programs. And this endowment lecture is also an innovative idea. And I thank that, and I consider it a great privilege that I got this opportunity to deliver this lecture. I'll be failing in my duty if I don't remember my teachers. I thank TNA, and also I thank God for whatever I am. At the same time, I thank TNAU, Madurai campus and Coimbatore campus for making me what I am. I remember my good teachers here, Dr. C. Ramasamy, Dr. Srinivasan, Dr. Komberaju, Dr. Alagamani, Dr. Anjugam, late Dr. Ilango, and late Dr. Loganathan. And Dr. C. Ramasamy was my chairman for my PhD. And whatever trade I have learned is from Dr. K.N. Selvaraj. So he is the one who taught me this trade aspects. And last 22 years, I've been working on trade. After my PhD in TNAU, I went to Pajankova that is in Pondicherry for 7 years. And then I got an entry into KU. So I once again thank you all. In this presentation, I'll be telling about some basic aspects of international trade because I know that some of you are not exposed to that. Then I'll come to the what is happening and some works that we have done. So you know about the difference between international trade and domestic trade. When a commodity crosses the national boundary of a country, we call it as international trade. But international trade is different from domestic trade because we have studied that there is immobility of factors of production. So within a country, other than land, the other factors of production can move. But in international trade, these things cannot move. Then we have the heterogeneous markets, the languages, the customs, the weights, measures. We talk about in India in kg or tons, but in international market we hear about pounds. So we have different national and political groups. We say we and them, and we have the major difference that is currency. Whether you go to Mumbai or Delhi, you pay in Indian rupee, but in international trade, if you buy from Sri Lanka, you have to pay in their rupee or dollar or a common currency. So then we have the tariff structure. That is, tariff is the tax that is to be paid at the customs when a commodity crosses the national boundary. So the legal environment, all these things are different. Then there is complexity in payment of international trade. So in domestic trade, we say that I'll pay in rupee, but in international trade, if you tell somebody that I'm agreeing for a price, and if you agree for a particular price, and finally when you see that you found that what you have agreed for is from Madurai, but he thought that you will bring it to New York. So in international trade, we have the terms like X works or FOB, that is freight on board or free on board. So it means that FOB means the cost that you are quoting for the commodity is up to the board of the ship. So that is the price that you are quoting. Your duty ends at the board of the ship. FAS means free alongside ship, or it can be CIF, or it can be duty delivery unpaid or duty delivery paid. So all this, what I wanted to tell you was that there is complexity in the payment of international trade. So why should a country export? Because a country will be earning foreign exchange. Why we need foreign exchange? It is to buy, because we are not only an exporter, we are importing also. So when a country enters into international trade, we usually say that this company or this country is a major exporter. So somebody has been able to survive in the international market means he has performed well. So the reliability of that person is high. There is widening of markets, so that helps to overcome the seasonality in demand and makes the exporter more competitive. Unless he is competitive, he will not be able to survive. There will be free exchange of ideas, cultural knowledge, all this in international trade. Then why international trade? What is the reason behind the international trade? So we know that different countries are endowed with different resources. India has got land. We have got different natural resource endowments. We have agroclimatic conditions. We have natural resource endowments. If you think about Gulf countries, they have the petroleum reserves. So naturally, every country is endowed with different resources. So the cost of extraction, we too have petroleum products, but the cost of extraction is high when we compare with Gulf countries. So then the inputs that are required for the production of different commodities are different. Different commodities have different factor requirements. So we know that some of the commodities require more labor, some require more capital, that is money or machines. So that is another reason. But we have already seen that land cannot move, and labor, if you want to go to a foreign country, you need a visa for that, and that too is not very easy. So it takes time for it to get a visa, and sometimes it will run for many years. So what I was telling you was that I cannot move to a foreign country, but the book that I write can easily can easily be sold in another country. So we have the natural resource endowments, and because of these natural resource endowments, our cost of production is less, and we are competitive, or we have the advantage of production, and so we produce more. Some countries are endowed with more labor, so we produce, when we look at the commodities that are produced by India, they use more labor because it is cheap to produce here. So So when this land or the resources cannot move, the commodities that are made out of this will move because there is demand for these commodities in countries. So we have a concept called as free trade. That is, in international trade, if you have restrictions in trade, if you allow commodities to enter freely to another country, that is called as free trade. But there are restrictions that is called as, there are two types of restrictions: tariff and non-tariff barriers, non-tariff measures. Tariff means it is the duty that is to be paid at the customs when a commodity crosses the national boundary. And there are two types mainly: specific tariff and ad valorem tariff. Specific means, if I say that if I want to export something to a country, for every good you have to pay 10 rupees, or every kg or every ton you have to pay a particular amount. That is called a specific tariff. Whereas ad valorem means, if this book is worth 100 rupees, you have to pay 10%, means you have to pay 10 rupees as duty at the port. So when this commodity enters that market, it will be 110 rupees. That is called as ad valorem tariff. Sometimes it can be a combination of these two. So why? Because arguments, people favor international trade or free trade because they say that it helps to increase the consumption of people. Now, in our younger days, we used to see only one type of apple. That was the apple that comes from North India, Kashmir. Now, if you go to market, you find 10 types, different types. So that is one argument is diversity. That is, we find diversification. At the same time, trade also helps to increase the consumption by increasing the income as well as giving us different tastes. So then we know about Indian market. Sometimes there is a, at the time of harvest, the commodity arrival is high and the price goes down. So what is the possibility to overcome this? Why don't we export this part? Sometimes there is a deficit, the price goes up. So how can you overcome that? Why don't you import it? That is called a stability argument. So these are some of the arguments that favor international trade. So if you look at the non-tariff measures, measures that are other than the tariff measures are called as non-tariff measures. One is quota. Quota means if 10 tons is allowed this year or 10,000 tons is allowed to India, once the import to a country, to our country crosses 10,000 tons, the gate is closed. That is called as quota, quantitative restrictions. So it is saying like this: if you want to enter this room, you have to pay 10 rupees, that is tariff. That is a specific tariff. If I say that only 20 people can enter, that is called as a quota. So once it is 20, I'll close the door. So you can understand that what is more restrictive is quota rather than tariff. Quotas are more restrictive. There are many types of quantitative or non-tariff measures that you find. It can be standards. It can be sanitary and phytosanitary measures. That means you are controlling trade, saying that if you allow these commodities to enter to our country, there will be transmission of disease, pests, or it will affect the human health. That is sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Sometimes if you say that there is a packet of, if you have a bottle of mineral water, the labeling requirements, the size of the pack, the width of the bottle, that is technical barriers to trade. If you want to export to a country, the size should be like this, the shape should be like this. All these are examples of non-tariff measures. These restrict the trade. Then, see, what countries do to promote exports or to protect their people. What, see, if you want to protect a farmer of your country, just think about a person who is producing in India a commodity at 200 rupees, but somebody in Sri Lanka is producing at 100 rupees. So we know that if the transportation cost is 20 rupees, once the commodity comes here, it is cheap. So we are not worried whether it is from China or Sri Lanka, we will buy the commodity. But Indian government or our government wants to protect our farmers. If 100% tariff is imposed, 120 rupees, when it comes inside, it becomes 240 rupees. So our farmer produces at 200 rupees, but because of 100% tariff, the commodity comes inside at 240 rupees and nobody will buy that. So governments use these tariffs to protect the domestic producers. There are different arguments for that. Then sometimes, in a country, in India, a farmer produces a commodity at 8 rupees per unit. But in Pakistan, the same commodity is produced at 16 rupees. So according to the rules of the international trade, Indian producer is competitive, but that government is giving 10 rupees as subsidy. So the effective cost for him is only 6 rupees. So what happens? It will appear as if he is efficient. So that is subsidy. That is one way of protecting. So there are trade agreements between countries. If there is an agreement between many countries, that is called as multilateral agreement. If there is an agreement between few countries, it is plurilateral. If there is an agreement between two countries, it is bilateral. So if India is imposing a sanction on Iran, it is called as unilateral. That means I make the decision, you have to obey. So these are all terms that we have in international trade. Then we have, so one way of promoting a trade is devaluation. You know what is a exchange rate? Exchange rate means the value of one currency in terms of another currency. So if you say that US dollar is 83 rupees, 82 rupees, that means to get one US dollar, you have to give 82 rupees. So if the government is devaluing it, what is the meaning? Earlier, one commodity was 700 rupees. That person was supposed to give $10 because 70 rupees is equal to $1. But devaluation means it has been brought down to 85 rupees means now he has to pay only $8 to buy something from India. For a buyer from outside, it looks cheaper for him. So devaluation is a measure for promoting exports. So that you have to remember. So whenever we talk about trade, there are many factors affecting trade. The demand factors, supply factors, and macro factors. Demand of any person is affected by the income, that is income of the country. We find that export of India is affected because the income that those countries are in recession. So there is no export. Exchange rate movements. I told you the exchange rate of Indian rupee with dollar or euro will affect the trade. So if there is appreciation in exchange rate, that means then Indian exports will look costlier. If it's depreciate, then it will look cheaper. So then price movements, quality aspects, or these are demand side. Supply side is what are the cost of inputs? What is the managerial efficiency, government incentives to producers? There are macro factors which is beyond the control of these people. That is the policies of the government. There are trade agreements between countries, trade barriers. These are macroeconomic policy factors. So I already told you a domestic company or a person may look for domestic international expansion because there are product life cycles. In India, if you want to sell a commodity, if I started selling this book, after some time, the demand for this book will come down. You know, you have studied in marketing about the product life cycle. So, but then I should look for another country where the life cycle is in the growing phase, so that I can sustain in that market. So this is one reason. Then the uniqueness of the product. So there are why people go to other markets: economic motives, then strategic motives for growth, for risk spreading. See, if I have only one person to buy my product, there is risk. If I have seven persons to buy my good, the risk is less. So this is how Indian trades are classified. Indian trade is classified. Some according to the harmonized system. What is harmonized system? There is a HS code of 6 digit that is same throughout the world. So if I say that I'm exporting this the code is same throughout the world. There is a 6 digit number which is same for this mango, pepper, black pepper, chili, or you say any commodity up to 6 digits, it is same because people don't see when they enter the international trade, they see only the number. So when I say this commodity, it is same throughout the world. That is called as HS system. In US, there is 10 digit HS code, but in India, the national tariff line is up to a 6 to 8 digit. Then in India, it is classified as open general license. That means you can, most of the commodities can be freely exported or imported. That is OGL. Then some are prohibited. That means prohibited entry means entry with permission. You need to get a license for that. Restricted means you cannot export or import. Ban means you cannot, that is ban. Then some of the commodities can be exported or imported only through certain agencies. FCI, Cotton Corporation of India. So you have certain agents, that is called a state trade. So these are all, then in international trade, we have the absolute advantage. Hope you know this. I'm just introducing this and coming to my topic. So this theory says that, you just think about this. One country requires 200 laborers to produce 1 ton of rice. Another country requires 150 laborers to produce 1 ton of rice. It is natural. Who is efficient? One who requires 150 tons. Hope you got it. So that country has to specialize in the production of that commodity and export it. This was put forth by Adam Smith, and this is called as absolute advantage. But the problem is, about when you are in UG, you study different subjects, but in PG you go for specialization. But in UG, and if you say that I like everything, you cannot specialize in everything. You can specialize only in one subject. So then we found that I like everything, but I like economics more. So my comparative advantage was greater for economics. Are you getting my point? There is a story like this. If I'm paid 5,000 rupees per day, and for my work, this is just an example. I have a typist to whom I'm paying 1,000 rupees, but I can type 3 times faster than my typist. Should I engage a typist or should I teach? Don't tell me you should type. But the principle behind this is, see, I am 3 times faster, but should I type or should I teach? But if I teach, I'll get 5,000. But if I type, I can save 3,000, but still there is a 2,000 difference. So hope you got the idea. I can even employ 2 more typists, but still I can earn 2,000 rupees. That is a story of comparative advantage. So that is the next theory. It says that if you have that is absolute advantage, the problem is some countries will have absolute advantage in everything, but you cannot export that. Then you have to look for the commodity in which your advantage is best. That is what comparative advantage is. Hope you have studied the concept of opportunity. Hope you have. Hope you know the no problem. I have to face. Yeah. Hope you know the idea of the opportunity cost. It says that how many units of a commodity you have to give up for getting one commodity. So you are sitting here. The opportunity cost of sitting here is maybe doing something else. So a farmer has got 2 acres of land. He can grow rice or vegetables. If he grows rice, he'll get 2,000 or 2 lakh rupees. If he grows vegetable, he'll get 1.5 lakhs. The opportunity cost of growing vegetable or paddy is 1.5 lakhs. What do you lose? So if you have 2 lakh rupees, either you can invest on a project or you can deposit in a bank. So the opportunity cost of investing in the project is what you lose. So this principle is like this. See, if you produce a country's resources are limited. If you produce one pineapple, you cannot produce everything. You have to give up 2 bunches of grapes. But if you produce in another country, if you produce one pineapple, you have to give up 4 bunches of grapes. See, the opportunity cost, you have to give up something to get something. And giving up is greater in second country, but giving up is less in first country. So in terms of number of grapes given up, it is cheaper to produce in country A than country B. So we say that country A has got a comparative advantage. So country A has to uh, specialize in the commodity for which its opportunity cost is less. That is a principle. So this is what I said. Country A, you will give up two grapes to produce one pineapple, but you give up 4 bunches of grapes to produce one pineapple. So it is better to produce pineapple in country A. That is what is called as a comparative advantage. If you come to the reverse of that, look here. If country A produces one bunch of grape, it has to give up half of a pineapple. Whereas country B, if it produces one bunch of grape, it has to give up 1/4 of the pineapple. So for grapes, it is the opportunity cost is less in country B. So it has to specialize in the production of grapes. So these are the fundamental theories in international trade. These are some of the basic things that we have to keep in mind when you talk about trade. So country B should specialize in grapes and country A in pineapple. So let me come to this with this introduction. That is the basics of international trade. We have been hearing about that the importance of agriculture in Indian economy is coming down. The contribution of agriculture to GDP it has decreased from about 70, or in the early days from 90s it was around 63 to around it is around 30% to 18 to 20 or 15 to 20% in recent years. But what you have to keep in mind is agriculture is still important for the economy. You cannot avoid this because about 40%, 40 to 45% of the population is dependent on agriculture for employment. So we cannot neglect agriculture. Even if the contribution from agriculture to GDP is coming down. If you look at the reforms into Indian trade, till 1991, we were having a bias against agriculture. We were not allowing exports. We were not allowing imports. Hope you know that our aim was self-sufficiency. So whatever exports were allowed were residual. That means if you have something balanced, you can export it. But after 90s, the economic reforms of 1991, when Narasimha Rao was the CM, was the PM, Prime Minister, and Dr. Manmohan Singh was the Finance Minister, we had the economic reforms with the LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Liberalization means shackling the unnecessary involvement or the bureaucratic control was the idea of liberalization. Then privatization means involving the private sector in the public sector or privatizing a part of the public sector. Globalization was integrating with the world by reduction of tariff. Now you know what is tariff and other restrictions on trade. So at the same time, if you remember, there is an agreement on agriculture because of the WTO agreement in 1994. There was a GATT agreement. In 1947 or in 1940s, after the World War, different countries met together and they wanted to have an organization for world peace. Hope you know that UN. Then World Reconstruction, that was World Bank. Then World Financial Reconstruction, that was IMF. They wanted to have an organization for world trade, but that didn't materialize because it was not passed in the US as a Congress. So there was an agreement called as General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. There was just an agreement, but not an organization. So countries used to meet and they used to liberalize. They used to say that I'll give you so I'll reduce the tariff or reduce the tax for the commodities, or that was the kind of treaties or agreements that countries were having. But in the 8th round of the GATT agreement, countries met together and they decided to bring many topics into that. And that resulted in the formation of WTO. And in WTO agreement, there is what is called as an agreement on agriculture. And it has got 3 pillars. Oh, I don't know whether you have studied: market access, domestic support, and export subsidy. So at the same time, what happened is it is difficult for all of us to agree on something because there are many numbers. So when in WTO, India was the founder member of GATT with 23 countries, and in WTO there are 164 countries, 123 countries in 1995, 164 countries later. But it was difficult for all countries to join together, agree in everything. So what happened? In between, when we cannot agree on everything, we will form small groups and agree on something between us. That is called as regional trade agreements or free trade agreements. That also happened in between. All these have affected the trade of the country. That is what is affecting our trade. That you have to keep in mind. The agreement on agriculture, I was telling you, it has got 3 pillars: market access, domestic support, and export subsidy. So what is the objective of agreement on agriculture? It was to establish a fair and market-oriented agriculture trading system. That means in games, in sports, we say that everything should be fair according to rules. Then it should be market-oriented. That means according to the demand and supply. It should be according to the markets, demand and supply. Then I told you about in trade what happens. Some countries give support, subsidies, and through that some people are made efficient, not naturally but in an artificial manner. So that is called as agricultural support. Then what is I used the word protection, that is the tariff and non-tariff barriers. This is affecting trade. So the long-term objective of agreement on agriculture was to reduce the agricultural subsidies and the protection and to prevent the distortions and restrictions in world trade. What was the aim? To improve the efficiency and to have competition. When competition comes, the efficient one will survive. That was the idea, but it has got problems also. So you need to depend on market forces. So you know what are market forces? Demand and supply. These are the market forces. So these are the principles of WTO agreement. So what are they? Trade without discrimination. What do you mean by MFN? Most favored nation. If I have a friend, what treatment I give for my best friend, I should give for all. That is called as most favored nation treatment. So if I treat my best friend in trade, India gives a concession to Russia. It has to be given for all the members of WTO. That is the idea. What treatment you give for your best friend, you give for all. That is the most favored nation, treating people equally. In international trade, it is about commodities. Then what is national treatment? Once this has come through the proper channel, not smuggling, through proper channel in international trade, I should not say that this is Chinese. I should treat foreign goods and Indian goods equally. That is called as national treatment. There is another principle. This is called as trade without discrimination. You know about the discrimination that Indians are black faced in South Africa. That was called as apartheid. So that is discrimination. Likewise, in trade, we have the discrimination. So you cannot discriminate people. Then another principle was free trade. That means you have to reduce the tariff. That is through negotiation. It is negotiation means you talk, sit around a table and talk and reduce the tariffs. Then predictability. Those days, what used to happen is when you export to a country, you cannot predict what will be the tariff. Now, if I jump, I cannot jump above this. This is called as ceiling because that is a maximum. But in trade, there was a problem. People were not aware of the maximum. So it can be 200%. 200% means a commodity is worth 100 rupees means it will become 300 rupees when it enters the market. If it is 3, it can go to any percentage. So you cannot export to a country. But because of the WTO agreement, it was said that you should give in paper what will be the maximum tariff that you will impose for a commodity when a commodity crosses the national boundary. That is called as bound tariff. Now I know what will be the maximum tariff that will be imposed by China on Indian rice. So I can make a calculation. So if I export for 48 rupees, so they may impose 100, even then it is 96. So that calculations I can make. So that is called as predictability. That is very important. Then removing the quantitative restrictions. I told you quantitative restrictions are more restrictive than progressive reduction of protection. Then I was telling you about the promoting the fair competition. See, when we have a competition, you find you find in boxing there are different groups, or in sports you have different junior, sub junior, or you cannot find people competing with each other. Junior team competing with senior team, you cannot find. There should be a level playing field in trade. That means people should stand at the same level. You should not make somebody who is this short stand him or make him stand here and say that he is as tall as what I am. That is in trade. Somebody is not efficient. Don't make him efficient by giving subsidy. That is what is the level playing field. That's very important in trade. These are the principles in trade. Then all these principles were having the idea of development. Development means improving the per capita income of a country that through reforms. So these I don't want to go into the WTO agreement, the agreement on agriculture. There are 3 pillars. I said in these 3 areas, the countries agreed on reduction in tariff, and there was a differential treatment. If you look at there, you can find developed countries were having. The agreement was the organization started from 1995. Developed countries had 6 years to implement these, but developing countries had 10 years. There was a special and differential treatment. If you just look here, you can see that if developed countries were asked to reduce the tariffs by 36%, developing countries were asked to reduce by 2/3 of that to 24%. So there is a special treatment, differential treatment given for the development and developed and developing countries. So these are the 3 areas. So they put some values, they kept some base values. From that, we have to reduce over time the tariffs, the support, and the subsidies that are given for exports. That was the principle. So I told you about the agreement on agriculture. So earlier I have already discussed that tariffs are more restrictive than non-tariff barriers. So it is better to have tariffs than non-tariff measures. So what do you have to do? You have to convert all non-tariff measures to tariff measures and then reduce the tariffs one by one. That is called as progressive reduction of tariff. Then we have to have bound tariff. I told you about bound tariff. There is a maximum tariff that can be imposed on countries. So after the Uruguay round, most countries' tariffs were bind. Bind means we are tying it. That means we know what will be the maximum tariff for each of the commodity in each of the country of the world. So then we have domestic support. WTO doesn't say that it is not saying that you should not give support, you should not give subsidies, but it's about the traffic signals. Red means stop, green means go, but yellow means you have to watch and go. Likewise, in WTO agreement or the agreement on agriculture says that some of the subsidies are forbidden, some are you have to reduce, and some it's allowed. So that is what, that is what it said. So it is about, sorry. So it was about, there was a calculation called as aggregate measure of support. Different countries give subsidies in different forms. You know about the subsidies that are given: power subsidy, it can be fertilizer subsidy, or it can be, that is one type of subsidy. Then we have the consumer subsidy, where we pay less for the commodity that we buy through the fair price shops. So we have different types of subsidies. Some of the subsidies we cannot say for which commodity is given. With some subsidies we can say for which it is given. So we have a calculation called as aggregate measure of support. That is one calculation. Then we have what is so this is a subsidy that can be given, that is green box measures. It said that, just look there, these subsidies will have minimum impact on trade. If government is giving some assistance for research to agriculture college, how can it affect trade? To farmers or some people for research organization, it will not affect trade. Some pest or disease outbreak is there, some subsidy is given for that, or training, extension, or some payment is given for the farmers, it will not affect the trade. So these are minimum, it will have minimum impact on trade, it can be given. There are, we know about subsidies given for production, but in developed countries, they give subsidy called as blue box subsidy. They say, they tell the farmers, you don't produce this year, we'll give you subsidy. That is called as blue box subsidy. So those are found in, they're called as production limiting subsidies. Then the special and differential subsidies. There are some subsidies that are given in India or poor or developing countries to poor farmers, or they are called as investment subsidies. So these won't affect the trade. This can be given. But what cannot be given is the amber box, or these are subsidies which cannot be given. There is a calculation called as aggregate measure of support. So what was the idea? That was that if you calculate the subsidy together as well as for individual, that means rice, wheat, and also together for the agriculture sector, the subsidy should not be greater than 10% value of the agriculture produce, or GDP. In roughly, we can say that the subsidy should not be greater than 10% of value of the agriculture produce in a developing country. That was the idea. So this you have to keep in mind. But what happened, countries started putting everything into these boxes, which are allowed, and sometimes it will be in boxes which are not allowed, but they used to shift the box and say that this is allowed. Then WTO went for another calculation called as overall trade distorting support. So that was another calculation, but I don't have the time for that. Then the third category, that is export subsidy. There is difference between export subsidy and production subsidy. In production subsidy, it doesn't mean that you have to export it. But if export subsidy is given, it means that you have to export the whole thing. So that is the subsidy that is given for marketing, transportation, freight. At times, at the time of WTO agreement, these subsidies were not a problem for India, but now it has become a problem for India. So these are some of the key dates. It was coming to an agreement in agriculture was a big problem. It took many years. So there is what is called as the ministerial conference once in 2 years. Countries were finding it difficult to agree because we know about developed countries giving a lot of subsidies. I heard a minister from Brazil saying that I would like to be born as a cow in a developed country in the next life than to be born as a farmer in a poor country, because a cow gets more subsidy than a farmer, a person in a developed country. So there is a kind of subsidy that is given in developed countries. So countries find it very difficult. They say, why don't you open your market? We cannot open it by reducing subsidies. You have heard about tea coming inside, pepper coming inside. You find edible oil coming inside. The price goes down in the domestic market. So we cannot open it all of a sudden. So there were many issues. These discussions went for many years. So you have to keep in mind that when you think about WTO agreement, there are many aspects. The TRIPS, you have studied courses on IPR. The TRIPS is an issue in WTO agreement. Then sanitary and phytosanitary issues, the technical barriers to trade, the agreement on agriculture, all these are issues. Now, presently, these are the issues in WTO. That is market access. You know about market access? Why you cannot access one market? Because of the tariff and non-tariff barriers. Different countries still have tariffs and non-tariff barriers. Tariffs have come down, but non-tariff barriers are increasing. If India is trying to export prawn, you know about prawn? prawn. When we export prawn, they say that we won't allow prawn because when you catch prawn, you are killing turtles. But turtles that are coming to the seashore for laying eggs, they are called as olive ridley turtles. They get caught in the boat, in these boats, and they get killed. And what the US says is that you should have the turtle exclusion devices in your boats. Otherwise, we will not allow you to export this to our country. Then it says tuna dolphin case. Then when you catch tuna, if that is for Mexico, dolphins are getting killed. So we won't allow you to send your tuna to our country. They may say your rifles are emitting, very well, the greenhouse gas or methane gas. So we cannot allow you to export rice to our country. So about the tannery, the leather industry. So you pollute the environment, or you have children, child labor. So we won't allow you to work. Your labor conditions are poor. These are all non-tariff barriers that are coming up in trade. So market access is a problem. So domestic support is still a problem. Countries give subsidy. They say you reduce, you are having high subsidy. What happened in India, because of the National Food Security Mission, we have started giving the food grains at low price or free of cost for 2 rupees. Our subsidy bill started growing. So you should keep in mind about the 10% of value of the output sector, the rice or wheat. We crossed that, and that became a problem for India. So then the export subsidy is a problem. Export restrictions are problems for India. Then there is something called a special safeguard mechanism. See, there is a provision in WTO which says that when you open the gate, that means in trade, when you allow imports, sudden spurt in imports come, you can raise the tariffs. That is called as, but when it comes, you have to make that calculation. How much? No, if it was last year, the import was 100 tons. No, this year it is 150 tons. I can raise the tariff. That 150 or 120 or 130, that is called as volume trigger. How much? Price trigger. Last year, the import price was 100 rupees. This year, the import price looks 75. There is some problem. So I should be allowed to impose a tariff. So that is called as price trigger. See, this is a problem, like keeping a helmet over your head. You can raise the price, but that became a problem. But the greatest problem for India now is the last one, the public stock holding for food security. There is a temporary solution. There is no permanent solution for that so far. Our food stocks have become a great problem. They say that you have crossed the subsidy limits. So that is a problem for Indian food security issue is there. So let me come to, with this background, if you look at the export policy of the country, can you look at the table? You can see that we used to have a lot of restrictions on export of commodities. Now, if you look at the 92, 97, that is the first, after liberalization in 1991, that was the first trade exim policy. That is for 5 years. If you look, you find the MEP, minimum export price. If you want to export, the export should have this much of price. Then only we will allow you to export. Export is restricted, regulated, quantity control. You find words like that. But as you go to that side, as the years pass by, you find that most of them have become free. That means government, the policy is allowing free export, except for rice and wheat, because we have a feeling that if exports are allowed at times of price rise, the domestic consumption will be affected. The domestic price goes up. So that there is some problem because of at times government bans it, but still, the policy we are liberalizing. This is import. That was export. Import also became free. Just look there. The last column says about the late. So one of the 2009-2014 import policy, imports are comparatively free now. So you can import anything except for few commodities. Channelized means you can import only through one particular agency. That is called as channelized. So that also came down. So these were the trust in export policies. Import, export liberalization, liberalizing the exchange rate. Exchange rate can either be pegged or it is left or floating or free. So I cannot teach everything, but if it is allowed to, exchange rate is determined daily based on the demand and supply of dollars. So that is government has allowed that. Then there is reduction of tariffs. Quantitative restrictions were removed. Hope you have the idea of the basic terms. Then you understand that government has liberalized. The government understood that trade should be allowed freely. So that has been the policy of our government over years. So agriculture became free, export ban lifted. So whenever there was a rise in price, government used to restrict some trade, but trade became free. So we have the special agriculture and village industry scheme, capital goods scheme. So government understood that agriculture exports have got a big role to play in the country. So earlier, it was not like that. There was a bias against agriculture. So it was like a drunken man's walk. It was called as a drunken man's walk. That means government's policy was like, you know about drunken man's walk. He works there, here, he will not have a balance. The policy was like that. But now it is a steady walk. The policies are steady. So the trade policies have improved over time, and many of the restrictions on the commodities have, we are not self-sufficient in pulses and oilseeds, but imports and exports have become free. At times, government controls. Now, in 2018, for the first time, Government of India came out with what is called as an agricultural export policy. That is the first time of the country. Government wanted to diversify the export basket and boost the production of high value added products. You know about Indian exports of agricultural commodities? Most of the commodities are exported as raw products. The mango pulp is getting exported and it gets packed in Australia and we buy it back and bring saying that we have imported it. But so what happens? A farmer is below in the value chain, is below. And what happens? It is called as a value chain. And somebody, when they have to move up in the value chain, if you have to get a higher share in the market. So that's what government was aiming. And government started promoting non-traditional products. So the barriers, sanitary and phytosanitary issues all started changing. I told you about the value chain. Government wanted to integrate with the world value chain. That is the path to which the commodity moves. So it was to help the farmers to enable to get the export opportunity by giving them infrastructure support, logistics or transportation support. They started seeing agricultural exports as a holistic thing, and involving state governments through and promoting what is called as Brand India. About the geographical indications. Hope you have studied about geographical indications. About I think Madurai Malli. So these are all geographical indications. So the Brand India came, and private processing and investment came in agriculture. Quality became an aspect, and research and development came. So if you look at trade liberalization and agricultural trade, what happens? We have seen there is a removal of tariffs and non-tariff measures. So it will affect the prices of commodities. So once the price changes, what happens is the price of this commodity or this book changes. Means what I'll do is I'll compare farmers. What they'll do is they'll compare the price of coconut with some other commodity. That is called as a relative price. They will see not only the price of coconut, they'll compare it with another commodity and say, okay, this is more profitable now. It is called as relative price. So that will lead to changes in cropping pattern and production, and that will change the country's competitiveness. So because of reduction of tariffs and non-tariff barriers, there is increased market access. So exports change and the growth instability. I'll come to that. This is the structure of what comes now. So just look at India's share in world agricultural exports. So what we find above is India's share this is share of agricultural exports in total exports. So there is an accepted thing that as a country grows, the contribution of agriculture to the GDP comes down. It is not because of the deceleration of agriculture, but the development of other sectors of the economy, services, industry. This will be reflected in agriculture also. So exports, earlier we used to export agricultural commodities. Now in total exports, the share of agriculture is close to 13 or 14% or 10 to 15%. But it is greater than what you find in world. In world, if you take world as a whole, the share of agriculture in the world exports is less than 8%. So we are greater than what we find in the world. This is India's share in world agriculture trade. India is the 8th major exporter in agriculture trade in the world. And India's share has been consistently increasing over the years. Now, these are two shares, export share and import share. Export share was less than 1% in agricultural exports in 1980. It has been consistently increasing. Look at 1919. If you look at 1994, that is 1994, we find that from there it started consistently increasing. But in between, there is a dip because there was some problem in the world because of low commodity prices or recession that have affected. Then there was a commodity price problem in 2008. Our share came down, but continuously our share has been increasing. But one thing we have to keep in mind, at the same time, our imports are also rising. So you cannot say that I should be allowed to export, but I will not allow your commodity to come inside. It is a give and take policy. You have to allow that also. That's why the imports are also rising. This is called as balance of trade. What is balance of trade? Difference between exports and imports. So when exports is greater than imports, our balance of trade is positive. Trade balance is positive. So in agriculture, we always had a positive trade balance because our exports are greater than imports. So that difference, the third line, is there because we are a net exporter. Export is greater than import. So this is actually the breaks in trade. If we statistically analyze the trend breaks, we find that up to 19, you should keep in mind the basic thing, 1995 it is WTO. So from 1995, what we find in the case of agricultural export is an excellent growth. And you find the breaks. Breaks means it is not a straight line, it breaks. It breaks. So you find a break, except for few years. There is a dip because of the world recession. So the exports have been continuously growing. From in 1970, it was 487 crores. But you look at 2021, it is, you find it as 4 lakh. It is 4 lakh, 4 lakh crores. So that is a growth. That's a growth. That too, if you look at 1994, it was around maybe 1,000 or 2,000, sorry, 2,500 crores. From that, it has grown to such a big value. So that is the kind of growth that we find. So there is a calculation called as openness. Openness means exports as a share of GDP, exports as a share of national income. So if you bring that concept into agriculture, openness means trade, I mean, the exports divided by the agriculture GDP, that is national income. So that shows a country's integration with the world. So keep in mind the concept of globalization. So we are globalizing, we are increasing our openness. Openness is export openness is in blue line. The import openness is in that orange, and the gray line is the total trade. It is a sum. So we are becoming open over years. It has declined slightly, but no, our openness, our export openness at times it is close to 15%. That shows that we are integrating with the world. We are globalizing with the world. This is the value of that in average. You look at different decades. You find the export openness has been increasing from 3 to 9 in different decades. You see the pre-WTO and post-WTO periods, pre-1994 and post-1995. It has doubled. It is more than doubled. But at the same time, the import openness has also doubled. So we have integrated in the world. The trade has become open. Our country has become open. This is the calculation for growth. How much the exports have grown over years. The exports were continuously growing, except for the 2010-2019 period because of some world recession and some commodity problems, price problems. Our exports have grown. And imports have grown greater than the exports. But if you look at the pre-WTO and post-WTO period, the export growth has been 3 times in the post-WTO period. So I believe you know what is meant by post-WTO now. So that is a growth, and the growth in imports. At the same time, it is instability means ups and downs in trade. So we find the import instability decreasing and increasing, but export instability is increasing. So that is a problem. When you open up the gate, when you link with the world, you don't know what will happen because you are linked with many countries. The ups and downs can come anytime. So that is one problem, and that may affect our farmers also. That is another issue with the trade. Then this is how the share has changed. India from time immemorial, was a traditional exporter of coffee, tea, spices, cashew. You know about that. But what has happened in this period is the share of those commodities in total trade has decreased. We have lost to countries because we have lost the competitiveness. We lost our domestic consumption is growing, our cost of production is growing. Except for these three commodities, we have lost in the world. We are importing cashew, processing and exporting. Tea and coffee, we have lost to Brazil. We have lost to even tea, Kenya, Sri Lanka. We have lost to different countries. So in total export, this is the share. It has decreased. But you look at the other commodities. We have diversified our export shares in fruits, vegetables. This is actually the share of these commodities in total exports have increased. So we are diversifying. Rice and wheat government, in 1993 it was basmati rice. Government allowed basmati, not the common rice, the normal rice. But now government allows both. India is one of the largest exporters of rice. So we if government allows freely, it will be very high. But it is around 10% of the share of our earnings is from rice. So the composition of our export basket is changing from traditional to new products. But marine products, it is not agriculture alone. It is agriculture and allied. So marine products always share the highest share in agricultural exports from the country. So this is how most of the commodities, the share has grown. So it is called as commodity diversification. I have an index which tells about the diversification. It is Gini concentration index. This is calculated. The concentration index value comes down means the diversification is increasing. That's the meaning. So it means the diversification is increasing. The trend line shows that it is getting diversified. That is better. See, if I sell only this, I know I can sell only one commodity. But if I sell 5 commodities, my risk is less. Even if price goes down in one, I can survive with the other. So it is diversifying is always good. So that is one thing. Just look at the share of countries. That was commodity. This is countries actually. So we have different countries and different shares. Earlier, the first share was for Japan. That's a developed country. The second position in our total exports, agricultural exports, what is the share to these countries? That's the meaning. So in 1992, triennium means you should not take the average of 1 year. You have to take the average of you should not take 1 year and say something in a trade because there can be variations. So what we do in agriculture or in any analysis of the economy is we take the average of 3 years. That is called as triennium. So 1992 ending means 1991, 91, 92, and 89, 90, 1991, 91, 92. It's an average. So what you find is the Russia was the next major market, then USA. You find developed countries, the major markets. Saudi Arabia was there, UK, but mostly developed countries. But you come to the what has happened over time is now our major market is Bangladesh. We are exporting to Bangladesh, developing country, Asian markets. Then you find USA is still our market. It is in term value terms, but you find UAE, it's a Gulf country. We have the diaspora, Indian population there. So this market is Saudi Arabia, then Vietnam. These are all Asian countries. We have, hope you will remember the free trade agreements with these countries, and our share with these countries are increasing. So our share is getting diversified. It is not only selling commodities, it is selling to many people. If you are the only buyer, if you have some problem with me, I lose. But I have many buyers, it is always sale. So we have diversified. So I have a calculation called as Hirschman index. What it says, the value comes down means we are diversifying. So we have diversified. The trend says that we have diversified into many markets. So it is a good sign. It's a good sign for the India's agricultural export. So if you look at the world agricultural the exports of cereals, wheat, rice, cereals, especially after 2000, it has been increasing exorbitantly. This is not of India, but of world. So USA, Canada, EU, there are 27 countries, EU, European Union. So that is one group, 26. So that other than that, there are many countries, they are there, but that green is other countries together. So India is one among that is increasing. So if we come to cereal products, India's cereal products, rice and wheat, which are the major markets? These are all derived from the ITC, International Trade Center Export Potential Market. If you look at this circle, the size of the circle tells about the potential, the scope, how much potential is there. So Saudi Arabia, Iran has got the largest potential. But you find two circles there, a concentric circle. That means in Iran, we have exploited 82%. Remaining is only 8%. So in Saudi Arabia, we have exploited 86%. That is the second market. Bangladesh, we have exploited, you find in Bangladesh almost 69%, remaining is 30%. But the highest untapped potential is China, 335 million for India's cereal products. So this size tells about how much billion we have. So United States, we have scope for cereal products. Only 44% we have exploited, still untapped potential. That means still we have potential for this market. See, this is for rice. That was for cereals together. This is for rice. Again, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Iraq. But those markets we have exploited. That's why it is dark brown, or see, those colors tells about the region. So that color is Middle East means almost brown. Then Western Africa means that yellow. South Asia means green. That is the color of those circles. And this is United States means a violet. So these colors. So this is how there is a greatest potential for India's wholly milled rice in US. So this is the ranking of those markets. If you look at the ranks, the potential markets for India, for semi-milled rice, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, almost 25, I have listed 25 countries where the potential is there for these markets. But potential is different and ease of trade is different. I have potential to sell to all of you, but it is easy for me to sell to him than to her. So that is ease of trade. That is the second thing. So rank changes. So the ease of trade, it is easy to sell to Nepal, Bangladesh, UAE, Kenya, Oman, than to sell to United States because the requirements are great, are high. So that is another classification which it shows the ease of trade. Ease of trade is given by the width of the line. You have a line there. The width tells about the ease of trade. So easy to enter those markets. The requirements in those markets are less. So these are the potential markets for India's export. This is, I have just listed region wise. These are 4 regions. Same picture, I have reduced it to 3 regions so that you can read the name of the countries. So look here, Middle East means Gulf countries. They are the major markets for India's exports of rice. Then comes North America, that is US, Canada. Then comes the South Asia, that is Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, or Nepal, those regions. These are the major markets for our countries. So this is the untapped potential for horticultural trade for India. At present, India ranks 6th in terms of, at present, India is 11th in actual exports, but our potential is to be in 6th position. That is our potential. That distance is the untapped potential for horticultural exports. So this is derived from the ITC potential map. You can just go there. You can do free courses. If you go to the International Trade Center, you search it, you find ITC SME Academy. There are many free courses. At the time of COVID, I did many courses. They don't charge anything. You can do free courses sitting at home and learn things. So there are many courses. It is ITC, International Trade Center, and SME Academy. Very good courses on trade. So this is then it is about that. See, there is a gap. I told you, India's gap, for the potential gap for trade. In many countries, we have gap. In United States, in China, that shows there is potential for India to export the horticultural products to this country. So what we have seen now so far is the tariffs to countries have reduced. So the exports should increase. That's what we expect. But still, I know many countries have reduced the tariffs, but we find our exports not increasing to that extent. You know why? The reason, just look here for black pepper. I have a case. We have done studies on that. The tariffs have been reduced to 5%, 1 point is very low. But still our exports No, this is the tariff that is imposed by Canada or Japan on Indian pepper. It has been reduced, but still our exports are not increasing. You know the reason why? This non-tariff measures. You know what are non-tariff measures? One is there are different categories of non-tariff measures. Now, one important non-tariff measure is sanitary and phytosanitary measure. So this is actually measures that are applied to protect animal, human, plant health from health risks. You know, if you have bird flu disease and if there is egg export from Tamil Nadu or meat export, and they say that we don't allow your meat exports because it can transmit the disease to our country, there is a sanitary and phytosanitary measure. Sometimes it will be genuine, but sometimes it is used as a trade protection measure. So that is a problem. So then we have TBT. TBT, technical barriers to trade, means it is a product size, shape, design, testing requirement, certification requirement, and so this are SPS is much prevalent in agriculture. You know, now the greatest problem for India's agricultural exports is SPS issues. So during the time of independence, we talked about physical access to food. You know, we had only 50 million tons of food grains. So people who had the money to buy food were not having food to buy. That is called as we were not having physical access to food. Food was not there. Then because of green revolution, the food production went up and the problem became money. Economic access to food became a problem. There is food lying there, but we have the percentage of population below poverty line who are not able to buy. There is economic access to food, but our income has grown. We have sufficient income to buy food. Now we think about safe food. Is it safe? Whether it is pesticide is applied, whether it has got some, it is called as ecological access to food. We talk about safe food now. So if we talk about safe food, then countries around the world look for safe food because their income is better than our income. Just look at the issues that we have. Aflatoxin in spices, groundnut. These are some examples. There are many cases. So India's rice exports, basmati rice in recently, is from Punjab is affected because of pesticides. So Punjab government has banned 10 pesticides. So the traces of those pesticides are there. Now, we did a study on cardamom in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. You are visiting the auction centers. I saw that. So cardamom is a crop where the MRL means maximum pesticide residue levels that are allowed is there only for 3 pesticides by the Central Insecticide Board of India, but 40 pesticides are applied in cardamom by the people. So you look at the pesticide residue in 19. So these are all issues. This is the problem that is going to affect India's trade in the coming years. See, just look at the non-tariff measures that is affecting black pepper exports from India. These are all, the non-tariff measures are increasing. Just look at one case. I have some arrows. When the number of non-tariff measures are less, next year the export goes up. The country imposes more measures, we find it very difficult to sell to them. If I say that it should be like this, it should be like this, we'll not be able to sell in the market. So those are affecting our exports to different countries. So the exports. So this is the import of black pepper to different countries. You know, in USA, the import is 75 lakh US dollar from India, but the problem is the number of non-tariff measures is 50. India is able to meet those standards. But you just look at Saudi Arabia. What happens is the non-tariff measures are 270. The requirements. So, but we are not able to meet those standards and the exports to those countries. No, the exports in the non-tariff measures in China is 242. The imports to, you cannot export to that country when the requirements are high. So that is going to be a problem for Indian exports or any exports. So just look at the TBS. In USA, there are 38 TBS measures, 11 TBT measures, and that comes to 50. European Union, it is 18. This is what is going to affect our trade, pepper trade. That is true. You just look at chili. India is a major exporter of spices. Chili is a major export among spices. But we find in red chili, the Kashmiri chili powder, we find Sudan dye. There is a carcinogenic dye that is added for red color. So our exports were caught with these dyes. And so we have the SPS imposed by different countries on that. So you find the requirements are very high, but some countries the requirements we are able to meet, some countries we are not able to meet, the exports go down. That is our issue. See, just look at cardamom. This is the case of cardamom. Saudi Arabia was a major exporter. In 2019, because of the presence of pesticides, they banned India's exports of cardamom. We lost Saudi Arabia. So the exports came down. This is actually, there are 78 measures of SPS measures and TBT measures. And our exports to Saudi Arabia is that green. In 2020, it was almost close to nil. Then the next year it survived, it came up. So then UAE became our market. The problem here is what is rejected by UAE may be purchased by some other country. There is a problem. There is no uniform standards in the world. There is another problem. We cannot say that, see, if I go to a market, I'll say that I'll buy only with this cover. You cannot ask me why. This is my taste. So that is a problem in international market. There is called as the Codex Alimentarius system in the world, but different countries follow different standards. So this, just look at India's exports. See, Saudi Arabia is purchasing from different countries, and you find India's share in 2019 decreased to 1.28%, whereas Guatemala is a major exporter. Its share increased to 99%. Guatemala is a major. So India lost that share. So these are the standards. I was talking about the standards. Just look at these standards. You should have labeling requirements. 6. You find labeling requirements. You find testing requirements. These are the non-tariff measures, SPS measures, that we need to look after when you export, so that we are finding difficult to survive in the world market. So then I told you about the regional trading agreements. When different countries are not able to come to different agreements, countries started entering into small agreements. They are called as regional trade agreements. If they just reduce the tariff, it is called as preferential trading agreement. If they eliminate, tariff and non-tariff measures among themselves, see, if I just reduce, that is called as free preferential trade. If I make it zero, so we form a free trade agreement, North American free trade agreement, Canada, USA, and Mexico. That means between them, the tariffs is zero. That is free trade area. Then custom union means between us, the tariff is zero, and we will have a common policy towards all of you. We are friends. We have a common policy towards the others. So that is common customs union. Common market means between us, labor and capital can move. That is called as common market. Then economic union means between us, the three of us, the tax, the monetary policies are same. The highest form is called as a monetary union. That is EU, the euro. That means the common currency. This is what is a regional trading agreement is. So India entered into different agreements. These are not regional agreements, but different agreements, because at WTO they found it very difficult to come to agreement. There were many countries. It is like a spaghetti bowl. It is like a noodle box. Different countries having different combinations. I have a friendship with this. I have a friendship like this. So overlapping combinations and friendships in the world. But it is, do you remember the principle? What treatment I give for my best friend, I should give for all. This is against that principle. But WTO agrees that at least this is good for world trade, because at least some friendship will come and this will reduce the tariffs in the world. But this is allowed. So this is what is increasing in the world trade now. So we find different trade agreements increasing in the world. These are all different free trade agreements of the country. So I am coming to my last part. India has got a free trade agreement in pepper. So this may be a little bit coming. So we have studied what is the effect of this agreement on our farmers, on our consumers, producers. We have an Indo-Sri Lanka free trade agreement. We have a South Asia free trade agreement, SAFTA, and we have an ASEAN, about the ASEAN countries, 10 countries, a free trade agreement. And these are this is an ASEAN free trade agreement. It came to force in January 2010, and India agreed to reduce the tariffs. So there were not all commodities are equally. There are different tracks. Normal track means you can reduce in a phased manner. Sensitive track means, to slowly brought down to some percent. Special means it is somewhat differential. You have to treat those commodities. Highly sensitive means step by step. Exclusion means no reduction for those commodities. This is a big topic. I'm just giving you an insight. I know that it's a bit tough. This is how you take the case of pepper. It is a special treatment where the tariff is to be reduced for black pepper for imports. That is, India has to reduce the tariffs for imports from ASEAN countries in slowly. So in 2010, it is 70, means slowly it has to be reduced to 50%. That is the idea. That means 50% means if the tariff, the import comes at, if somebody is importing at 300 rupees, you have to pay 150 rupees at the customs, it becomes 450 rupees. So this is how it has to be reduced. So this is the tariff reduction. So ASEAN countries know what has happened is over years, if you look the trade, this free trade agreement has resulted in increased imports of black pepper from ASEAN countries, and the countries, the share has increased. We are importing. No, that is a problem. When you open your gate, the flood water comes inside. Imports come inside. So hope you have heard about Kerala farmers and some Tamil Nadu farmers crying and saying that please don't allow imports. The prices that we get is coming down. But these are agreements. When governments enter into agreement, they just don't look at black pepper alone. They look at different commodities, and the total welfare is what is looked at in international trade. So that is what is happening. The share of different commodities. India is also exporting to those countries because Indian exporters are having processing units in those commodities. So if you look at the balance of trade, hope you remember the balance of trade. It is the difference between exports and imports. So imports from ASEAN countries are greater than our exports to ASEAN countries, and we are importing lot from ASEAN countries. You know why? It is for processing. We are making the oils and oleoresins in India, processed products. So this, I just wanted to show you India's share in the world production of the black pepper has been decreasing. What is a major problem? Our productivity is very low. Our productivity, this is a ratio. Our productivity in terms of their productivity as a ratio of our productivity is, just look at Malaysia's productivity. Just look at Vietnam. It is 5 times India's. Or in 2010, it was 9 times India's, the productivity. That is a problem. This is from FAO Stat. We have published it in different places. So, I told you about importing from black pepper. The idea is, even if you import black pepper from Vietnam, and impose 100% tariff, import at 200 rupees, impose at 100%, that means it becomes 400 rupees. It is cheaper than black pepper of India. So if you are just a consumer, are you worried about buying from India? No, we look for cheap products. That is the problem with trade agreements. Consumers may be benefited, but producers may lose. But total welfare, you have studied about consumer surplus and producer surplus. The total welfare may increase, but producer surplus may come down. That is what happened. We did this with SMART model. It is a partial equilibrium model, which we have analyzed with certain assumptions. I know that it may be beyond the year's scope, but for some PhDs or some students, we have studied this and we used this. We have 2 assumptions. There is infinite export elasticity and finite export elasticity. That means the export supply elasticity is parallel or it is less. That means if you reduce the price, the exports buying will increase. So we tried this. There are 3 effects. Trade effects. It is called as trade creation and trade diversion. Trade creation means when you enter into an agreement with another country. So before the agreement with I told you about an agreement with 3 of us. Before agreement, I was buying from him because the cheapest pepper was from him. And before agreement, I was imposing a tariff of 50%, but still his pepper was cheaper. But now what happened? We have an agreement between us, and their pepper becomes cheaper when compared to his pepper. But his pepper is actually cheaper. But for them there is no tariff, so that becomes cheaper, and the trade moves to a high cost producer because of this agreement. That is called as trade diversion. Trade creation means the trade moves to a low cost producer. It is called as trade creation, and that is what we have found, and we have calculated this. Let me go fast. It is so the trade creation and trade diversion we have calculated, and we found that trade creation is more than trade diversion by a small amount. So the total welfare you find 1201 is greater than the change in the other thing. So there is a change in welfare, but welfare is well-being. Hope you have studied from the first course. So there is an additional advantage. There is a welfare because of trade agreements, but mostly for the consumers rather than producers. So this is a problem. The producers of Vietnam may gain, but the consumers of India may gain, but the producers of India may lose. So this is the problem with the trade agreements. That is a problem. So let me go fast. So who gained? Indonesia, Vietnam. I was telling about the assumptions. We let me go fast. We tried another model. That's a gravity model. The gravitational force depends on the mass of the commodity and the distance between two commodity, two persons or two. The same principle is applied in trade. Trade between two countries depends on distance and the size, that is the income. With that principle, GDP, we have tried this model in for black pepper exports with this model, and then we found that this again we have analyzed, and there is a problem in this analysis. What happens is some years the data becomes zero. Some type of a regression or a type of analysis we cannot run. That is a selection bias. That was overcome by the Heckman model. It is beyond the scope of. I'm just telling you about this for some higher studies or some students who are in PhD or PG. So we did this analysis, and again we found that distance. About the countries. Many countries are Commonwealth countries. Commonwealth means they were under the British government. They are called as Commonwealth countries. So already we have a trade relation with those countries. They are like children of the same mother. Earlier we were under the Britain government. So we already have a trade relationship. That is a major factor affecting India's trade. Distance is a major factor affecting trade. So this is GDP. This we have analyzed, and we have calculated the impact of the Indo-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement. And this also, let me go fast. We have calculated the Indo-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement. Sri Lanka produces very little of pepper, but the pepper that comes from Sri Lanka is a big amount. You know what is happening? From Vietnam, it goes to Sri Lanka, then comes to India. That is called a circumvention. So we have a rule in international trade called as rules of origin. When you export, you have to attach a certificate which says that the export has originated in India. So this, to avoid this problem. So we went for this analysis, and we calculated what is called as the interrupted time series analysis, because there is an interruption in time series. So this analysis also, we analyzed this, and what has happened is we found that there is significant growth in imports from these countries, and it has affected India. That is the analysis that we have studied, and we did the same model for black pepper, and this agreement has affected India. There is an excessive imports to our country. This is the break. Second period, third period, you find the exports increasing. Can you see that? Just that values itself show that there was, and this is called as interrupted time series. There was an excessive growth in imports to our country, and you see the values. Whether it is South Asia Free Trade Agreement or the Indo-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement, our country has been affected by this trade. So let me finish before finishing. If you look at the performance of major crops of our country, we find that what has happened is in the I have divided this into two periods. I'll finish in five minutes. So in the pre 2000 period, what has happened is, this trade is expected to affect our growth. But 8 crops decrease in area, and jowar decreased in production, whereas arhar decreased in productivity. And areas of 6 crops increased marginally. Soybean and sunflower had the greatest growth in area. And what happened, except in jowar, other crops, the increase in productivity, I'm talking about the first period, the increase in productivity was more than the decrease in area. So the production growth is the sum of the growth of these two. See, production is area into productivity. We know very well. So that's how we have to look at that. So the productivity growth offset the decline in area growth that resulted in production growth, except for jowar. So in the pre-lib period. But what happened in the post-liberalization period is, you know, uh, 7 crops decreased in area. The growth in area was only marginal growth. The production of 3 crops declined while other crops increased. But you should remember that the productivity growth was the contributor. But when we look at the production growth is only marginal. You cannot say marginal. What I mean is 2% is not a big growth for 20 years. It is not a big growth. So if you look at the crops which have grown, it is not the trade liberalization that has affected the growth. If you look at the pulses and the oilseeds or the rice, you find it is the price support policy of the government, the minimum support policies of the government that is affecting the trade growth, the production growth in the country rather than trade. That is what is affecting, because we are still, these policies are deciding the crop. Then I went for in the written material, I have given the diversification, about diversification. So what has happened is trade liberalization is expected to promote specialization. Specialization means you are narrowing down the number of crops. So diversification comes down, because I told you about you started WTO agreement saying that it is efficiency will be looked upon. People will specialize in the best crop they can produce and all. But the analysis says that there is an improvement in crop diversification rather than specialization. So in India, if you took a look at the India figure, crop specialization is not happening, diversification is happening. Because the risk is increasing, people are diversifying. So in 20 states, the diversification is increasing, not specialization. In 14 states and union territories together, the specialization has increased. But these 20 states in which diversification is increasing, that means people are having risk. So because of that, they are having many crops, and that accounts for 62% of the gross cropped area of the country. So what I wanted to conclude with this is that, if I have given you a rosy picture of India's agricultural trade at the macro level. India's agriculture trade has grown, wonderfully grown. GDP has grown, but the trickle down effect, that means that growth has got to come down to the farmers, the income growth. You look at the incidence of borrowing, indebtedness of the households. The rounds of NSSO are not very comparable. These are large sample surveys conducted by the NSSO. 2013 and 2019 are comparable. There is not strictly comparable, but even then, look at the households. 23% of the households were borrowers, rural households. Now it is 35%. Look at the cultivator households. 26% were borrowers. Now it is 40%. People are becoming borrowers. They are indebted. Now look at the amount of debts. What is the kadam, or what is the debt? Rural households, it is 59,000. Indebted rural household, it is 1,70,000. It is increasing. So if there is income growth, where is that income growth? Except for the 2013, 2019, there is a slight income growth. But it has not trickled down to the farmers. So this benefit, the farmers are not getting. So farmers, the small and marginal farmers of the country, who form 90% of our, 80 to 90%, they need to aggregate, and they form not a small farmer will not be able to export. How they get the benefit? No, just take the case of pepper. A small farmer is not exporting, but if a pepper is getting exported, the advantage of the export, the farmers get by the prices, the changes in prices. But still, now you look at the price spread, you calculate in marketing, the price spread is more. That is the price paid by the consumer in a Gulf country or in a foreign country. The farmers are not getting, their share is less. That is why their income is not growing. So, friends, what I wanted to convey was it is a rosy picture at the national level, the macro level. We are a very good exporter, but still, it has to come down to the farmers and get benefited. But I'm not saying that farmers are not at all benefited. There are many issues in trade, but still there is a long way to go for our farmers to get benefited. So that requires many policies to aggregate the farmers, to work together and export. Let us believe and hope that our farmers will be benefited in the coming years. Once again, I thank TNAU, especially the College of Agriculture College and Research Institute Madurai and PGD for giving me this opportunity. And I'll be failing in my duty again if I forget to remember the role that TNAU has played in making me what I am. See, I came to Madurai as a PG student. 8 of us took agricultural economics. Two were in this college. Dr. Anjugam was an assistant professor those time, and she was a teacher for me. And this campus is what changed me. 2 years, it was 96-98 period. My period as a student here, it has changed my outlook. And then my period in Coimbatore, I remember Dr. C. Ramasamy, Dr. Ken Salvara, it has changed me. So this is the best place for you to study. And I wish you all the best. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable insights with us. Now, I would like to invite our professor and head to present momentum for our chief guest. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Now, I would like to invite our professor, Dr. J.S. Amarnath, Department of Agricultural Economics, to deliver a vote of thanks. Welcome, sir.
Okay, good evening to all. First at the outset, I would like to thank the VC madam for starting this initiative, a series of endowment lecture. And she is assisted by the PG dean, who is also instrumental in various meetings, and also he has sanctioned the amount for conducting the meetings. Okay, so these meetings, why, as with student, I want to put the question. You have 3 P's. Okay, what is that for PG education? Product, patent, and publication. Okay, to achieve this thing, we are having this sort of meeting. And also, I thank our ACE and Madurai dean for having this lecture in the campus. And we also do a lot of export initiatives. For example, Moringa Export Zone, and then Jasmine incubators, all those things. Okay, we do that at Madurai also. And especially I want to thank the speaker. He talked everything about the export, from the basic concepts and the data. Okay, it was very interesting. Okay, he has not he bored with the models. Okay, he has limited this thing, but he has done a very good thing. One thing. So especially, and also I thank our head, for picking him, because he not only he's the alumni of our department. He was also student of MSc student. He was the student of Dr. Kombai. Who was he? He was a former PGD. Again, he was the postgraduate dean of TNA. So he was the student of the postgraduate dean. So the madam has chosen the right speaker, okay, for this function, and also all our other staff members, we have joined together, and we have we ran this event a very successful one, memorable one. And also I thank other non-teaching and other technical staff and whoever left out. Okay, I thank all of you. Okay, for this grand lecture. Thank you all. Thank you one and all.
Professor, I have a question here. Please, myself. Yes, please. Formation of FPO, you spoke about in-depthness. Recently, the government is focusing on FPOs. So can the FPO model reduce the debt burden of farmers, seeing the international trade whether the trade benefits will reach the farmers as a consolidation. If FPOs are flourishing very well, whether we can see the fruits of it.
That is the only way, as you said. Aggregation is only through FPOs.
Yes.
But that should be genuine. That should be what we find many places is, sometimes vested interests come inside those formations. But if it has to trickle down to the farmers, aggregation of the farmers, the latest concept is FPOs. That's why Government of India is promoting FPOs. That is the sign. That is the true sign. But the farmers have to be benefited. I don't have the quantity, sufficient quantity for exports. And only way to get the aggregate sufficient quantity for export is FPOs. And it should be purely based on principles of business. That's how, that is the only way, as you said.
The formal vote of thanks has been given already. This is beyond our agricultural economics, but every students of agriculture graduate, they must know what is going on in the field in terms of trade or in terms of marketing. So I can able to feel from this presentation is that there is a lot of work being done on enhancing the production, but still we have to work more on increasing the productivity, at least not on par with the world averages, but to some extent we have to improve the productivity. So gone from other biological sciences, you can improve, you can work on increasing the productivity level through various sources. And second one is we have some kind of a lacuna in terms of meeting out the non-tariff barriers in terms of SPS standards. So this is highly varied among various exporting countries. There is a lot of standards. So can we have some kind of work on reducing the non-tariff or to meet out the non-tariff barriers in terms of improving the productivity as well as improving the quality of our products in terms of safest commodities or safest product. So as a student of this college, you can work on improving the quality standards of our own products so as to improve the exports. Not all the production is it is not gone for export. To at least always when we talk about export, we will say that must be a quality standard. But even for domestic consumption also, we need to have a safe products. So in future, we have to concentrate on these two lines so as to get not only the economic, improving the economic performance, we have to meet ecological performance and environmental performance also. So I think it will give a kind of an openness for other biological students also, I hope. So I also thank the students, participants for attending this endowment lecture organized by our department jointly with the Dean SBGS. So thank you for your order. So on behalf of our Department of Agricultural Economics and Dean SBGS and TNAU, so we will conclude this session now. Thank you for your participation, both from offline and offline. Thank you.
Thank you.